Happy Camper Radio, episode 70. Come on, let's go camping. Hello, my friends, and we're so glad to have you on board the Happy Camper Radio Show, the only place you need to be when you're ready to talk camping. Family-oriented camping. Camping is what we're about. Camping is all we talk about here on the show. Episode 70. Wow, where is time going to? Ooh. And Daniel and I talk about this too. I say, where is this year going to? It's just unbelievable. But, here we are right now, the first part of August.
Yep.
And all those months, this is the 8th month, and 8 months just zoomed right on by.
They did.
Wow.
Because you're having too much fun.
We
That's
are.
what it is.
We're having a blast. We do this every week. We think nothing about the time.
I love it.
But yes, it's just an awesome time that we're having. I can't describe it any more than that. And Daniel, next week, I am going to be out of town.
What?
Yes, I'm going to be out of town, but I am taking my gear with me, and with a little luck, depending upon your schedule now, I'm going to go ahead and make it known to all of our listeners, depending upon your schedule,
yeah.
I will podcast from the North Georgia mountains.
Oh, boy.
In the town of Blue Ridge, and I will have a lot to talk about. So you'll be back here on the home front. I will be in Blue Ridge, and if all goes well, that will be next week's episode 71.
Does that mean I can run the board?
Yeah.
Oh,
you
sweet.
Can.
All right.
Sure. I've got no problem with that.
I'm controlled now.
Yeah, just don't cut me off. You'll never hear the end of it.
Hey, it'll be okay.
Hey, folks, our phone number here at the Happy Camper Radio Show is 404-537-2267. You can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Happy Camper Radio. Follow us on Twitter and add us to your circles on Google+. Of course, every one of our social media icons are very simple to get a hold of. Just log on to our homepage, which is www.happycamperradio.com. And while you're there, make sure you click on the RSS feed button. We tell you that all the time. So you can add us to your email address, and is that how that works, Daniel? Because I've never really RSS feeded the show because I'm in control of it.
Oh, actually, can I talk about that? So there's this new podcasting app that I've been using lately, and it's the hot new business in the podcasting world. It's called Overcast.
Okay.
And what it does is it'll fill in the pauses. It'll go from 1 times speed, and it has like between 1 times speed and 2 times speed. There's like 4 settings in between those. I mean, to open all of that, it costs $5, but it's a really cool app, and you can download the show on that if you don't have a preference on, a podcasting app to download the show to.
$5 for as cheap as you are. You actually went and spent some money, Daniel.
You can get it for free, but to open all the goodies, it's $5. But it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
We'll keep that in mind for sure. Hey, this week, Daniel, a lot of newcomers we've got to shout out to. Oh, yeah, right down the list, I'll tell you. And I'm really surprised we had a lot of great folks just check into the show this week.
My ears were ringing. There were so many shouts. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, first of all, we want to say hello to Sanctuary Spa Holiday in the UK, Camping and Caravanning Directory, Camping Holidays, Caravanning Universe, and Love Barcelona. They all followed us on Twitter, and we have John Stefani, Dwayne Mace, Edward Barbarian of Chicago, and Peter Theron of South Africa. And let's not forget our friends at mobilerving.com. They added us to circles this past week on Google+. Thank you, each and every one of you, for checking out the Happy Camper Radio Show and being a part of this great camping family that we have here. And the 70 episodes, Daniel, in, a lot of folks are signing on, and I'm happy about that. Yep. It just gets me more excited each and every time I come into this studio here to go down a list of people that have either, checked in with the show one way or the other, whether they called or whether they emailed us or just, picked us up on social media.
Yeah.
I'm just so happy to have so many people interested in the show, which tells me, we've got a great format here. We've got a great topic that we're discussing each and every week. There's a lot of people that are into camping.
Yeah, there are.
So many of them.
And I didn't think there were going to be this many topics. When I first, started this whole camping thing, I was like, what are we going to talk about? Fires, firewood, but like the
and
more
I said,
and more,
Daniel, I said the whole time, don't worry about
you
it.
were right. You were right, Skip.
I'm always right
I know,
when it comes to Daniel.
It's recorded, Skip. You got it. You got it. You're right.
I'm sure I do. Well, Daniel, we've got an interesting topic of discussion this week, and I'm pretty much going to take a step back because, first of all, we have a guest on the show today, and his name is Byron, and Byron is from Texas. Byron, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, Byron, hey, welcome to the Happy Camper Radio Show. We're glad to have you on board.
Well, it's great to be on.
Good. All right. Well, Byron, I understand that, like Daniel, you served in the armed services, right?
Yes, that's correct. I served in the Navy and the Army.
In the Navy and Army. Daniel, and you were in the Navy, weren't you?
I was in the Navy. I worked with Byron on the USS Enterprise from, I was on there from 2000 to 2003, I think. I think Byron came a little bit later, but we hooked up in the process of being on the ship, and we worked together for a while. Then we kind of parted our different ways, and then through the magic of social media, got reconnected. And I found out that he was into the whole podcasting thing, and I said, "Hey, why don't you come on our show?" And I found out that he was in the Army. I was like, "Ooh, well, maybe you could talk about some of those experiences because." Unlike the Navy, Skip, in the Army, you got to go out in the field and you got to have tents and stuff. And,
I was about to say to both of you, I didn't think there was any such thing as camping on the high sea.
Actually, Byron, do you remember when those Rangers came to the ship and they all stayed in the hangar bay and they all had like sleeping bags and stuff?
Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah,
quite well. There was all the Apache helicopters on the ship, and then there was the Special Forces operations soldiers that were on the carrier as well.
Yeah, they slept in cots on the hangar bay, so that was kind of like camping. That was about the closest they got, I guess.
I was about to say that sleeping in a cot, that's pretty typical even in the Army. Just being a regular soldier, I was a MP in the Army, so sleeping on a cot was something that you got to get used to. Actually, I prefer sleeping on a cot than say as opposed to sleeping on the floor or on the ground rather. So, cots aren't too bad. It's just what you make of it.
Yeah.
Well, Byron, I can say this. Even though I have not served in the armed forces, I have the utmost respect for every branch of the military. And before we go any further, I want to thank you and thank Daniel as well as every other man and woman out there who served our country for your services to each and every one of us. Thank you so very much in advance. But, I understand that, you did some camping, and Daniel was briefing me on it here a little bit before we got the show started. Military-style camping, I'm sure, is a little bit different from the family-style camping that we're so used to talking about here on the show. I imagine you probably learned a lot about this in basic training, did you not?
Yeah, so, the field experience is definitely different than freestyle camping. Everything in the military is very organized. So, a guy, a simple soldier would be, pretty much, hey, you go pick this up and do this. But it's a lot of preparation, anytime we roll out to the field, if you're in a unit that actually does things in advance, which sometimes units don't do that, but a good unit will do things in advance. So you're going to prep everything for the field. You'll go to the motor pool. You'll pack everything, get everything into the trucks, into the trailers. And, come the day to roll out to the field, you're going to go out there and, pick up the trucks and pick up the trailers, and pick up everybody at the company. So you can have an early day of, setting everything up out in the field. So it's a lot of preparation. It's a lot of hard work, you got to set up your tents, and Army tents are not like, your standard tent, where it's just like pop, it's up, as some of these tents are. So it's a lot of putting stakes in there, hammering the stakes into the ground, it's get up early and then go hard on it and go strong at it. So
it kind of reminds me. It kind of reminds me in a way of my Boy Scout and my Cub Scout days, because we did a lot of camping back then. And I'm talking way back now, Byron. We're talking back into the early to mid 60s. So back in those days, we were quite used to hauling in the Army surplus tents made of very thick, heavy canvas. And I know very well about hammering stakes into the ground. I remember a couple winter campouts that we went on to this very day. So yes, it's back in those days. There was a time when setting up a tent was quite a challenge.
So what kind of different environments did you experience while you're in the military or in the Army?
Well, like a standard field experience, I was stationed in Fort Carson, Colorado. So a lot of times I go out to Camp Red Devil. And the great thing about Camp Red Devil, there's a lot of hard sites out there. So with a hard site, you wouldn't need to set up a tent. So with that being said, you'd go out there and stay inside a building, which that would be the hard site. And then you just set up cots. But, there's other experiences in the field, especially in Germany, where I was stationed at after Colorado, after my time in Afghanistan, where there were no hard sites for us to set up as far as, living quarters go. So we set up tents. And, that, of course, the big climate difference between Colorado, say, camping over there and camping over there in Germany, because Germany is so much higher, such a higher altitude. You got to imagine, Canada, or really the state of Washington, that's more of the climate that you're going to experience in a place like Germany. Plus, you have so much different wildlife in, I would say, Germany too. You have wild boar you have to contend with. So,
did you have any experience with the wild boar?
Bear,
I want to hear about these boar.
What's that?
I want to hear about these boar. Did y'all have some experiences with that or something? It sounded like y'all had some run-ins.
A lot of times, especially at nighttime, it's not uncommon to run across boar, because boar is there's such a heavy population of boar especially in Europe, that it's not uncommon to be wandering out in the field somewhere and then surprise there's a boar. But the biggest thing, just like boar here in the States, just like razorbacks here in the States, you don't want to really, you don't really want to provoke one of these animals, because they're very dangerous and they're very, unstable. So, if you provoke one of them to anger, you're likely going to get bit in the leg. They have tusks, and a lot of people get killed that way. My experience, I've never had any bad experiences with boar, but they were quite abundant. You'd see, for one, the droppings everywhere. And plus, they dig up in the ground. So,
it's funny. It's really funny you mentioned that, Byron, because I talk quite a bit about camping in the North Georgia mountains, and one of the very special hideaway places that we have up there, it's about a mile off the main road, and I know wild boar run back in there. I have never actually seen a wild boar, at least in the campsite area. I don't think I ever would want one, but I'm really surprised that after all these years that I've camping, I've never come across one within close proximity to camp.
It's been kind of my experience with some snakes in the Southwest, especially in Texas, even in Colorado. Texas especially, you have so many snakes. But every time I'm out there, camping or whatnot, I'm out there in the remote areas. I never actually ran into a snake. So the chances of running into a boar are similar, because boar are pretty much like a snake or even like a bear for that matter. They don't like people so much. So if you don't really pursue them, they're not going to pursue you. But if you were to corner one of these animals, or by mistake run across them, it could be a very, as obviously it would be, a dangerous situation.
We really never had a conversation on snakes on this show.
No,
I think we
haven't done that yet.
Yeah, and I'm kind of glad we didn't, because I think it probably would have turned a lot of our listeners away, especially the ladies. But I know I can tell you this much: I have actually seen some snakes out there, and I'm not a snake professional. I'm not going to look at them and decide, "Are you poisonous? You not poisonous?" If I see a snake coming and he needs his space, I turn around and do an about face, and I'm out of there. Yes.
Yeah, you don't want to mess with snakes. So.
Hey,
no,
Byron. So what was it like in Afghanistan? What were the conditions like and everything, and how was that different from Germany and Colorado?
My experiences in Afghanistan personally is, you're going out to, a fob, so, these fobs are already set up, but, I stayed for about a month and a half in the tent. Of course, it was a transient tent because they didn't have any hooches, pretty much what they call them, hooches or bee huts set up for us. So those are basically standard hard sites to live in, the hooches and the bee huts. But they didn't have that set up, so we were staying in the tent. And that was a unique experience because I was in Jalalabad, Afghanistan, which isn't in the mountains, so it's very, very hot there. It's 125 degrees in June. So you got limited AC, and it's just a very miserable experience. That's all I can describe it as. Anybody that's been to Iraq could pretty much describe the same thing. But, the experience over there was, I spent that month and a half in that tent, and then I kind of moved into a little basically a wooden hut.
What was the environment like? I mean, were there any animals or anything?
Oh, well, there's an abundance of animals. They had monitor lizards, for example. These things look like Godzilla. If you know what a monitor lizard is, about 6-7 foot lizard.
Oh,
guys,
wow.
don't get me wrong. I love animals. A mother and her fawn deer can walk up to my campsite anytime, but some of the creatures you're all discussing right here, no, that's enough to keep me out of the woods.
Don't want to hear about it, but that's kind of the environment you're living in over there, and you're just being simply in the Army, when you're traveling outside. You're gonna be exposed to the elements. It's not like being in the United States or some of the more developed countries. Afghanistan, on the other hand, is most people would know pretty much common knowledge is a very.
One thing that has me curious.
I wouldn't even call it third world. I don't really know how to describe it, but it's definitely one of those countries that kind of National Geographic. That's my
one thing that has me curious, and I'm the kind of a guy who really loves hanging around the camp, unlike Daniel, who just cannot sit still for 2 minutes. When you're preparing your food out there in the woods, do you have any special? Or do they provide in the military any special utensils that you carry with you to prepare individual meals, or do you all get together and do a group cook?
They have something called the MRE, which is a meal ready to eat. So, you're most likely going to have one of those. If you're out there, and you don't have any, you're not basically on a base, and there's not a DFAC, a dining facility. When you're out there in the field, you're going to depend on the MRE. Some people stash what we call pogie bait, which is like, you're going to have food stuffings that were sent to you from somebody in the States through the mail. You can take that like some beef jerky and eat that. But, pretty much what you're eating out there is an MRE. Of course, when you talk about people that do SEERS training or, survival training out there in the field, sometimes you gotta live off the elements and kill what you eat. But, that, again, is more geared towards special forces and people that are going to be, out there without, access to a base and access to things that, the normal Army would get through basic logistics.
Byron, we're going to have to get you back on the show when our friend Gary Sizer gets back to town. Gary, we have been keeping an eye on for the past couple months. He is hiking the Appalachian Trail start to finish. And he just put in over 1,000 miles. He is now somewhere in the state of Pennsylvania. And I know from reading a couple of his entries that he logs in maybe once every 3 or 4 days online. He talks about eating MREs and, just basically doing survival type camping while he's hiking. This is just like yourself talking about the military, the way they camp. Gary is pretty much doing the same thing on the Appalachian Trail. Now, he does carry a small tent with him, a very lightweight one, and I'm sure he has some other things that he's not weighing him down too badly. But this is definitely the type of camping that, you're not going to take your typical family, mom, dad, and a couple kids on and do. But it's real interesting to hear what life is like in the camping world when you're in the military. And, you're providing a lot of very interesting points that I've never even considered when you're out there in the woods.
Yes, definitely. And I would love to be back on the show for that.
Well, we're going to hopefully get Gary back here on the show. And what would you estimate, Daniel, he is going to be finished with his
Well, I
hike?
know probably in a little while he's probably going to be heading up to Maine and walking back down, because I know that park up there closes down towards the end of October, and I don't think if he just kept walking the way he does now that he'd make it in time, because I think earlier he told us that he was going to do that. So I'm sure he'll probably be doing that in about a month or so.
I think comparing some of Byron's experiences as well as some of Gary's experience would make for an interesting conversation.
That would be interesting.
And we'll definitely have to have both of them on the show here to talk about that. I know I'm just too old to get into that type of camping. Maybe if I would have been maybe about 20 years younger than I am right now, I could probably do it a little bit more. But right now, it's just as get out, relax, take it easy. I'm not saying take the comforts of home with you. I'm the last person in the world that would do that.
That's a good question, Skip. Byron, when y'all were out there in the field, did you ever have like an off day where y'all just hung out around camp? And if you did, what did you do? Just hang out, or did y'all do certain things? I mean, how would it be different from if you were in a campsite?
Well, to be honest with you, Daniel, most of the times when you're out in the field, a little bit of downtime that you're going to have, and I'm not talking about when you're deployed, because when you're in a deployment environment, there's going to be times where you're going to have downtime. Not too much, but as opposed to the field, there's not going to be a whole lot of time where, like, the few hours that you're going to get off, you're going to be sleeping because, you have to pull a watch in the middle of the night. So, there's not a whole lot of the, get around the campfire type environment. However, there were a few times in the field where, like the lieutenant or the platoon sergeant wanted to do something for the, kind of a squad building exercises or, rather platoon esprit de corps type things where we'd sit around and we'd, talk around the campfire and, cook marshmallows or something, something simple like that, just to kind of get everybody close, especially before deployment. So there were those types of instances.
Have you ever run into anybody in the military that did not like camping?
Say again, sir.
Were there any people in the military that you have met that got into the armed forces and decided after they were introduced to the world of survival type camping, we'll call it, decided they didn't like it?
I haven't known too many people. A lot of people that I was friends with and I worked with were big into, going outdoors and going camping, especially in Colorado. I mean, that was a big thing up there in Colorado to go camping. But, in Germany, too, there's a lot of great places to go camping in Europe. Germany's filled with, forests everywhere. So, there's plenty of opportunities. So I never personally met anyone, to answer your question, that didn't like, the whole camping scene.
I can imagine you're not going to be in the military if you don't like camping, because you're going to have to be in that type of environment. You're going to have to start liking it and getting used to it real quick.
Exactly. I mean, there are branches like the Navy where you'd be on a ship, as opposed to, for the most part, the Navy would be on the ship. Me and Daniel have that experience. So I, on the other hand, I kind of wanted to get the experience of the soldiers, so that's why I chose to join the Army.
Sure, when you're on a ship and it rains and it gets ugly, you can still run for cover. You can still go inside.
I guess it's the difference between somebody who likes to go sailing and somebody who likes to go camping. It's just two different, worlds. Of course, there are plenty of people in the Navy that go out to the field too, share the experience with the Marines. But for me and Daniel, we had specific jobs on the aircraft carrier that revolved around aviation, so we weren't those type of people in the Navy.
And I was looking at something not long ago on, I think it's National Geographic, about naval aircraft carriers and the long hours you guys had to put in. I was shocked.
Rough. We had it rough, Skip.
Sometime you were working, 18 hours a day?
That was mostly on the flight deck. They had it rough. Well, there used to be a saying in the Navy that you choose your rate, choose your fate, and they chose their fate. It's a hard time.
You did eat good, didn't you?
Yeah, it was good when a senator or a congressman came on.
Oh, I bet.
They always had. It went from rubber chicken. Byron will back me up on this. It went from rubber chicken, senator arriving, steak and lobster, like they had it at the ready. It was crazy every single time. Am I right, Byron?
Yes, you're exactly right. 'Cause you don't want to. The politicians don't want to eat. They don't want to see what it's really like on the ship. They want to have the best experience. So, But that's part of what makes being in the military great, because you don't live the cushy life. You live a more austere life. So it's as far as a camping show is concerned, people that love the outdoors and love just to be out there in nature. It's pretty much living on the earth. So I think it's something that the audience can relate to as well.
Well, this has been some very valuable information that you passed on to our listeners today, because I know for the longest time, have always wondered what camping was like from a soldier's perspective, and it's obviously quite different, because you're not going to be bringing the gear that we as recreational campers would typically bring out to the woods, whether it be in a private setting, a private or public campground, or if you're just roughing it out in the woods. You're going to still have some of those camping luxuries, as we may call it, your stoves and your
plasma.
Lanterns and a few other things, and maybe even that cotton, that real comfy sleeping bag and the pillow from home, like I always bring. And let's not forget about my recliner, Daniel.
Oh yeah,
So just absolutely have to have that. Because I have to have something to kick back in, and if I'm not going to kick back in my sleeping bag, I will definitely be inside that recliner. It's time now for our featured campground of the week, right here on the Happy Camper Radio Show. And this week, my friends, we are going to the state of North Carolina, to Davidson River. I pulled this website up today, and I love the photographs. Mm-hmm. That right there, Daniel, will just draw me into this campsite or this campground. And I'll tell you, this campground is open year-round. It says they're open through Wednesday, December 31st, 2014. But I also read here that, yes, the facility is open year-round. If you're a fisherman, if you're into trout fishing, if you're into hiking trails, and Daniel, I know you love to hike. This might be the campground that when I say we, I might even tag along for this one, because if you want to go camping, if you want to go hiking, they are well known for their hiking trails. Hikers can challenge themselves to the 12.3 miles Art Loeb Trail, the 3.7 mile North Slope Trail, or maybe I might try the 1.5 mile walking trail, Daniel, and just go back to camp.
Oh.
But this is a great campground, a great destination if you're interested in going. The activities and amenities, there are plenty. They have an amphitheater, bike rental, campfire rings. The campground entrance, where you can be greeted by the campground host, and the host is going to be there throughout the summer. And you can find all the information right there on their website. I'm looking at it right now, again, without my glasses. Lantern posts, payphones, showers, swimming, lots of great activities. The gate does open. Some of the things you need to know before you go. Gate opens from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. As far as the electricity goes out there, Daniel, you're going to be out of luck.
What?
Yes.
Oh, come on.
But you can bring your generator.
You
can bring a generator.
Yeah.
They do allow you to operate them 4 hours per day between the hours of 8 a.m. and 8 p.m.
Uh-huh.
So, you can find out all that information on their website, and you'll find it on our homepage this coming week. All you have to do is go to www.happycamperradio.com and click on the featured campground section. You'll find it right there. It's the Davidson Campground, and it is our featured campground of the week here on the Happy Camper Radio Show. And as always, if you have a campground that you would like Daniel and I to feature on the program, just send me an email, Skip, S-K-I-P, at happycamperradio.com, or
Daniel at happycamperradio.com.
Make sure you send a link to the campground website. Byron, are you still with us by chance?
Yes, I am.
Oh, well, Byron, I want to take one last opportunity to thank you so much for joining Daniel and I here on the Happy Camper Radio Show and taking the time to talk with us and give us some insight of what life is like in the military and military-style camping. And make sure you come join us again, especially when Gary gets back in town, because I'd love to have both of you on the program.
Well, I'd love to be on the show, so thanks for having me on. It was my pleasure.
Okay, Byron. Well, that's about going to wrap things up here for Daniel and I on the Happy Camper Radio Show. It's been an interesting topic. And Daniel, we don't really get to talk to too many people on the phone.
Not
but, I'm kind of glad we had an opportunity to talk with Byron today. But we've got some more great shows lined up. And, Daniel, I am out the door tomorrow afternoon.
I'm so jealous.
You hold down the fort, and hopefully I'll get an opportunity to talk to you while I'm away.
Yeah.
I won't be thinking about you much, but I'm going to at least throw in the show anyway. Hey, don't forget, catch us online anytime at www.happycamperradio.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Camp Talker, and add us to your circles on Google+. The Happy Camper Radio Show is a presentation of Skip Huber Productions. I'm Skip. I am a happy camper. Daniel's a happy camper. Woo! I'm sure Byron is too. And you, my friends, can be a happy camper also. Catch you next week. This is Happy Camper Radio.